Go ahead and start tonight with just some kind of brief introduction so we all know who's on this call. I'll start. This is Miranda Fisher. I'm the Deputy Town Administrator, Town Clerk, and hope to do kind of the admin support for the Envision 2030 team. Karen Blakemore, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Karen Blakemore, and this is Charlie. And she always likes to jump on my lap when I get on these video conferences quite often. I'm the chair of the Environmental Sustainability Subcommittee. I'm also on Parks, Recs, and Open Space with Jill. And I'm a planning commissioner. I'm on the board for Netherland EcoPass and also the Foresight 2 multi-party monitoring group. So I'm very passionate about the environment. And yeah, that's me.
Jill, you're next.
I'm Jill Dreves. I'm on the Environmental Sustainability Committee. And I'm the chair of the Parks and Open Space, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Committee. And I'm the executive director of Wildfire Nature Center. It's really fun to be on these committees.
Thanks, Jill. Tom?
Tom Mahold. I'm a member of this committee and chair another, the Municipal Government Economic Development. Kevin, thanks for joining. I've been reading your stuff. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks.
Billy, are you there with Zoe? You want to go next?
I am, yeah. Hey, I'm Billy Giblin. I'm on this subcommittee. I decided that was all I was going to bite off as part of the Envision. I am also a member of the Planning Commission and a member of the BZA for the town. And then my day job, I work for ResNet and help oversee home energy ratings nationally under the home for HERS index. HERS ratings around the country. So building energy is kind of my thing.
Zoe, are you there? Do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Zoe Lewis. I'm a mental health therapist and an artist, and that's my claim to fame. I don't know if there's other information I should be giving.
No. It's nice to know your background. Kevin, would you like to go?
I'm Kevin Mueller. I was on the Planning Commission for like 10 years. I was on the Board of Trustees for 8 years. I was fairly heavily involved in the first comprehensive plan in 2003. And then I was even more involved in the revised comprehensive plan in 2013. I specifically did not take part in the 2020 envisioning process. I was a newly elected Board of Trustee member and kind of did hands off with that process because I wanted to see what the community came up with. And I was happy that they came up with a vision that I was aligned with. So I've been up here since 2002. I'm an engineer and I actually worked with, I started my career in building science with Architectural Energy Corporation, and we were the ones who started ResNet.
Wow.
Do you know Rob Salcido? Do you know Rob Salcido?
I do.
Yeah, I know Rob. Yeah, I mean, he started working on REM rate and then EcoTruck. Now he's with PNNL. So yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He comes up here his company.
Nice.
Right on. So you were with Architectural Energy Corporation?
Yes.
Yeah. Good crew.
From 2000 to 2009.
Awesome.
I don't know if you also said that you're on the building committee of the Net Zero Nature Center that's getting planned currently.
Yes.
Invaluable resource.
Love it. Thanks, Kevin. Glad you're here. Susan, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Susan Wagner. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer. I live just on the southern border of Big Springs, and I'm also passionate about the environment. And having lived here for 30 years and gotten to know the animals in a way that's almost personal, I have a deep love and concern for creatures who are powerless against human enterprises of all kinds. And so one of my concerns is making sure that we go forward in the future, thinking long term, and making sure that we do what we can to preserve the conditions that permit us to coexist with our fellow creatures. And being on the southern border, I'm particularly committed to trying to keep the southern border wildlife corridor open. It's something that the town, in the recent attempt to renegotiate the IGA, there was strong support for designating all of this area as a prime area for development. So those are the concerns I come in with. And I want to say, Jill and Karen, at the ProSab meeting, I really appreciated the Parks and Rec statement. And you described, Jill, at some length how you all wrestled with the language and put in that we are part of nature. And that's another thing I'm passionate about. I think a lot of people, even living up here, sometimes see themselves as separate, as though we can harm nature and not harm ourselves. So that's who I am.
Thanks, Susan. And we'll just end with Dawn and Karen. So Dawn, you want to go first? Are you there?
Yep. Dawn Baumhover. I'm on the Arts, Education, and Culture Committee, along with Debbie Andrea and May Gerald, and also work for the town of Nederland as Community Center Manager, resident of Nederland for 26 years. And I am just here as a subcommittee member to listen in.
Karen, I believe, is on the phone.
I think I just finally got on.
Ah, yay. Okay.
Yay.
I didn't realize I had to download WebEx again, so sorry for being late, everyone. So thank you for coming, and I'm the town administrator, and I work with Miranda and helping support the different committees through the Envision 2030 process.
So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. And I'm actually going to turn this over to Karen Blakemore to begin kind of the feedback and however she wants to structure that.
I think what we want to do is pull up the document. Can you do that for us, Miranda? And if you go to page 5, maybe. Oh, there it is. Okay. Can you make that a little bit bigger? That's great. Okay. So Susan, we heard from you on what your concerns are, and you want to see the wildlife corridor maintained along the southern border. And are there any other overarching concerns or things you'd like to talk about, ideas related to the environment? Are you there?
You might be muted. Looks like you are. You're there, Susan.
We can't hear you. Susan, are you muted?
Yeah, no, I lost you for a minute. The whole screen disappeared. So
Ah.
yes.
So yeah, I just want, before we get into, Kevin has a lot of comments here on the document, and I just want to make sure that we get to hear from everyone. So if there's anything that other kind of overarching issues that you want to bring up, I thought now would be a good time to do that.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, because I only have a few comments. I want to study more, and I came on tonight so I could hear other people's thoughts. And I also want to hear your and your committee's ideas about how you set this up. My first impression was I would like to see more sort of overarching goals and themes, as opposed to, like, there's a lot of specifics about emissions and greenhouse. I'd like to see more about environmental preservation. That was just my first impression, and I I know that these statements overlap a little bit, like in the park and recreations. There's a lot in there about wildlife corridors and so on. So I recognize that I don't fully understand how all of these play together. But I think, I also wondered, I've read the 2011 sustainability resolution and all of the sustainability provisions in the 2013 comp plan. And I wondered if you'd drawn on either of those. And I was, I liked some of those provisions in that resolution and also in the comp plan where they got specific, but in a broader way about what we should try to do inside Nederland to become a sustainable community. I also have to say, I happen to be particularly committed to trying to keep development inside the town boundaries. I know that's not necessarily something for this statement, but that's the big picture. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your thinking and putting it together and then hear other people's comments. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe I should start with that then. So what we did was we did some research. We did research on what other communities are doing regarding environmental sustainability, and even looking at what the United Nations is, what their framework is for environmental sustainability. From that, we put together a framework, which was 8 different themes, and they are climate, ecological health, economy, energy and buildings, local food and agriculture, transportation, water, and zero waste. I should back up a little bit. The very first thing we did was the vision statement. That was after we had looked at the comprehensive plan, the vision statement from 2020, and other town documents concerning environmental sustainability, and also looking at the SWOT analysis. And this was a joint effort putting together the vision statement. I started with a really simple statement saying that we live in harmony with nature. But we really wanted to be a little bit more specific on how you would do so. And so we thought that we have an opportunity, being a small mountain community, to become a model for other communities on environmental sustainability. Perhaps there's things that we can do because we're a smaller scale that couldn't be done in a larger community. And we said, well, in order to achieve that, we need to be smart, knowledgeable about how we are impacting, individuals are impacting the earth. And then we also wanted to highlight climate change and taking action to mitigate against adverse effects. And then a more general statement of being really dedicated to the environment and conserving, preserving, protecting, and restoring it. And we wanted to put in there that it is connected to the social and economic aspects of our community, and that having a sustainable environment will provide a sustainable future, and that'll result in improvements in our social systems and our economy. Then we looked at what other communities were doing and put together that framework with 8 different themes: climate, ecological health, economy, energy and buildings, local food and agriculture, transportation, water, and zero waste. We also incorporated the current activities that we are doing as a town, and plan future activities around environmental sustainability. We've worked very closely with the sustainability coordinator, Garrett McDaniel, and also with the Sustainability Advisory Board. We also went back to the SWOT analysis to make sure we weren't missing anything as far as what the community valued that is currently in the community and what they would like to see in the future as far as environmental sustainability is concerned. We kind of iterated on the objectives. We did a little bit of wordsmithing on the goals. And then we consolidated some of the objectives. We added an education one to each goal. And we also added a social equity one to each goal. That education request came from Jill, of course, and the social equity came from Sustainability Advisory Board. We have more in our working document where we identified positive effects of the vision, which are economic vitality, cleaner air and water, improved soil health, resilience to wildfires and climate change, improved forest and ecosystem health, and improved quality of life for current and future residents. Got the wrong file up here. Let's see if I can go back. Get the version history. And this, okay, so the other thing is that we identified metrics, and that's in our working document, ways to measure whether we have variables that could be measured to determine if we've met our goals. That would be greenhouse gas emissions, electricity, including renewable, natural gas, water usage, waste, energy cost as a proportion of income. That would be energy burden, which is something that SAB is particularly interested in, is because the cost of energy increases dramatically for the lower income levels as a percentage of their income. We also have a metric of snow water equivalent in the Boulder Creek Basin. And then we broke out different initiatives and projects to achieve the goals and objectives. And these include things like developing a climate action plan, developing a zero waste action plan, the transportation improvement program, which is putting in sidewalk connectivity, fast charging EV stations like Corral. So I guess we could go through each of the goals. I think I want to hear from Zoe, if she has anything in particular that she's interested in discussing.
Sorry, my mouth is full.
Okay.
It always happens in Zoom meetings. Not in particular. I just it's real easy and comfortable for me to fade right into the background, kind of in the community, and I that doesn't feel great not doing anything to address climate change. So I'm wanting to, you know, show up here, see what's happening, and get a sense of how I could contribute my skill set. I always forget to say that I'm also a writer with some editing experience too. So mostly just wanting to start doing something, whatever. I'm not sure what that means yet.
One other thing I didn't mention was constraints. We realize that we don't have an unlimited amount of resources. We don't have an unlimited amount of money, volunteers, and other things in order to accomplish all the projects that we would love to do related to environmental sustainability. So, the constraints are funding for the sources, funding sources for the projects, which could be taxes, grants, or fees. Affordability for residents, employees, businesses, and visitors is another constraint. Limited staff and volunteers, and community pushback. So I guess what we could do is hear from Kevin. And Kevin, do you want to go through, how do you want to do this? Shall we go over each goal, or do you have some general comments that you want to make to start?
Yeah, I'll start off by addressing the vision statement, and just in regards to what Susan Wagner had brought up, we could add 2 bullet points to the vision statement. One of them being it kind of takes what's already there but makes it a little more specific. And that bullet point would be that wildlife and riparian corridors in and surrounding town are preserved, protected, and undergo continual restoration that maintains healthy habitat and ecosystems. Right. So that, again, that's what we see Nederland in the future as. We could add a second. I'm sorry.
I think that we have that as a goal. We have under ecological health goal, protect riparian habitats and natural drainage ways. So I think we have that covered already.
And so with every one of our goals and objectives, I think it's important that we can essentially take every part of the vision statement and attach it to a goal and objective.
Well, that riparian habitat and natural drainage ways attaches to the environment.
So that would be like
to the third bullet.
The third bullet. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I do like that. Like I said, the 2 bullets that I would add just make it a little more specific.
But there's so many, it's not just the water that we're protecting, it's also the soil, it's also the animals, also the trees, it's also the human beings by having a non-polluting environment. So I think we have that covered.
Yeah. Okay. I would not disagree with that. I think we have that covered. The one thing that I don't necessarily know if we have covered in that third bullet is that the surrounding.
Can you move it back up, Miranda, to the third bullet? Thanks. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think adding some language to the development or sort of addressing our undeveloped property, I would recommend adding this, that the surrounding undeveloped forest remain intact. And this is the future Nederland. Our surrounding undeveloped forest remain intact. Community development is contained within the town's original borders.
I don't think that's environmental sustainability. I think that's more planning. I think that's more on the
is that parks? Parks and open space.
Parks and open space, it would fit better. But no, I think it's really on town planning.
Well, could that be so? The third bullet.
I think that's
covers that.
It's land use. That is land use, which is outside of the scope of environmental sustainability.
Well,
why is that outside the scope of that? I don't understand that statement at all.
Well, because Because as far as what I agree that the town should remain small, surrounded by open space. I see that in the SWOT analysis. I personally think that that's a good thing to do, and I think it's the general consensus within the community. I think that belongs in the comprehensive plan under the land use and not part of environmental sustainability. I think environmental sustainability is concerned with, you know, preserving, protecting, conserving what we have. But as far as, you know, I don't think it's within our responsibility to be making a statement about that.
What does everybody else think? I think that's a great vision statement. We're essentially saying that that's how we want our community to be in the future. We want it to be contained, our development to be contained within our existing boundaries.
How does that make it a model community for environmental sustainability?
Because when we develop outside our boundaries and we develop out into the undeveloped forest, those particular properties cost more per square foot to build and to operate, because we have to extend our services, our municipal services, out into those areas.
So, you know, when I look at environmental sustainability strategic plans for other communities, I see nothing about land use in there. You know, this is like applying the sustainability criteria to the whatever the land use designation is, but it's not at the purview of environmental sustainability to designate land uses.
I don't think I agree with you. And if we're talking about being a model community, I don't know if we need to base our plans on other community plans. And I just don't really see how environmental sustainability would not include many things, including land use. And really what we're doing is putting out our vision statement and our goals and objectives. It's not like we're going to dictate necessarily, but I think the reality is part of having a sustainable environment is preserving untouched places so they stay that way, and then focusing the density where it's already impacted.
Well, I think we have that under ecological health goal: preserve and restore healthy and vibrant ecosystems for all inhabitants. So
yeah.
Well, just back to the vision statement, I think the third bullet covers that. I think having these were just really broad overarching statements of conservation, preservation, protection. But I think your thoughts around preserving surrounding land is an environmental sustainable goal. I just don't think it belongs in that bulleted area. I think that we should look at the ecological health goal and determine maybe if there's an objective within that goal that covers the surrounding areas as an overarching objective. It doesn't, you know, the objective doesn't really, you know, mean that we are stating how we'll do that. It's an overarching goal, an overarching objective within ecological health, I think.
Well,
but I don't think it belongs up there in the vision statement.
You know, I just see it as like saying we shouldn't annex property and we shouldn't, which I'm not in favor of doing that. However, I don't think it's our responsibility to be making those statements about how the land will be used.
I'd like to bring in another aspect if I could. I think I've read all these statements, but you mentioned here wildfire mitigation, don't you?
Yes.
Right. So there's additional problems developing out in the forest, and that is it's one of the major problems now with the oops, can you hear me? It's a wildfire issue. I mean, there was a paper prepared by Tanya Schoenagel and some others at CU that comments one of the big problems with these fires and destruction of homes is people continue to build out into the WUI, build out into the forest. And in her paper, she said the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, actually told the Forest Service to stop prioritizing the defense of towns in the WUI, like ours, because it's leading to misaligned incentives. And counties and towns are continuing to permit buildings out in the forest, which are, first of all, harder to defend. We have only volunteer firefighters. So I think this is directly related to sustainability. And it's something that we're having to confront in the town. Just I saw on tomorrow's BOT agenda, they're talking about a new building code that finally incorporates these things into housing. But not expanding out in the forest is a major component of being an appropriately defended town in this WUI, this wildland urban interface. So I don't know exactly how to say it. I hear what you're saying, Karen. You don't want to come down on specific issues, maybe like the one I was talking about before, in terms of land use and annexation and so on. But there are real principles, sustainable principles in terms of wildfire that you don't build out into forest. And there are misaligned incentives. Who's going to pay if the Cold Spring fire, the only reason we survived there, all these resources were available that weren't fighting fires elsewhere. Very unlikely that's going to happen again. There's so many fires. We have to depend on volunteer firefighters, and we can't always count on it. So we also need to think in terms of how big do we become? And we are in a location. Yes, people want to move up here because it's in the mountains and it's cooler. But we can't escape the fact that we don't have the services that a city has. We don't have the firefighting, the hydrants, the water out into the woods. And so I would just opt for some way to frame it that fits into this. I don't know where it would fit in, but.
Well,
Can you scroll down to ecological health, please? There we go.
Well, we don't have, I think I've made my points on this.
That third bullet is pretty weighty. It covers a lot. So, we can get away with moving those recommendations down into the goals and objectives because of that third bullet. You guys made a real weighty bullet item there. That's a good vision statement that we are a community dedicated to preserve, protect, and restore the environment. We can get away with a lot for that. So I agree.
Look at the third bullet. Look at the third bullet under ecological health. Look at that third bullet.
Right.
Doesn't that cover it?
It does. I added
same with the fourth bullet.
The fourth bullet, I'm recommending we change.
Ecological health goal, the fourth bullet. The third and fourth bullet of that goal.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. I think it does cover development. We're saying basically don't develop in riparian habitats and natural drainage ways.
It could be in the action planning. We have I don't know if there's the action planning section could be a recommendation that we consider, the environment outside of our boundaries of the town of Nederland. It's kind of an action. It's more of it's less broad. It's more specific, but it could be part of the action that, we consider the environmental impact outside of our boundaries when making decisions, or I don't know how to frame it. To me, that's more of an action plan, right? It's something we should consider. That's important.
Yeah. Okay.
So I tried to cover that with some of my additional bullets underneath the third. So if I can just start with the first bullet, encourage the use of native vegetation in public and private lands.
Yeah.
The reason I don't like that it's not a goal, it's not measurable. And and it's one thing I've saw when I was involved with the town, and I see it in other communities. Encouraging things, supporting things,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing our best just doesn't get us anywhere.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
This is our opportunity at this point to actually put some measurable goals together.
well,
So
I think it's okay for some of them not to be measurable. It's important for us to encourage native vegetation. I mean, for a lot of reasons, for the bee population, for the ecosystem.
yeah, I understand that, Karen, but how do
So-
we measure that?
I
How do we
do
measure whether or
think
not you
it's
encouraged it?
no.
not all of these goals. I mean, it's desirable that they be measured, but
Well, we could say increase,
but-
increase the use of native vegetation on public and private lands.
That's exactly right.
measure-
I like
That's
that.
measurable.
Encourage
I
is
think
kind of
encourage is a weak
passive.
word. I'm
It's
glad you
passive.
brought that up. No, I
I-
think
I
it's
would take it-
increase.
I take
Increase
it
the
further
use.
and I say we double the amount of native vegetation within town borders. That's
And that
measurable.
would be a specific though, that doesn't belong there, but I think that having an objective that says increase, that's an important objective to that goal, that we increase it, and then when we have an action plan down in our action area, it's exactly what you just said.
Okay, so we're
Right.
at the objective level, so we
Right.
say
No.
increase, okay.
But I think you should have action words there. I do agree that the encourage word is a
encourage
bit weak.
is an action, but I'm okay with increase too. So
I think encourage is great, but it's a bit passive, and I think increase is directional, and I think there's just more action implied by directional words.
yes. Now, what I want to say is that it's we want them to be measurable, but if they're not, it's still good to have them as policies, just like we have policies and comprehensive plan. And measurable, ideally, it would be something like double. But I'm reluctant to put that in unless it's something that is really achievable.
Right.
And I'm afraid this group does not have that knowledge.
I completely agree with that. But it's important to get it to that point so that the next time we talk about it, we start talking about exactly a real, is it double? Is it just, by a
Yes.
certain square footage?
Mhm.
And that leads me to a good segue into my next. So the next bullet is kind of the same thing. We're saying reduce the use of synthetic herbicides and pesticides. Now, with this document, this is a document at its base. This is direction for our municipality, right? This is policy that we want the municipality to follow. This is policy that sets how the municipality is going to spend our tax money. That's at its base. And then, of course, as a community, we want this document to also kind of spread out into the community. We want the community to help achieve these similar goals. But the reality is, we only really have control over what the municipality does. So with the second bullet, it says reduce the use of toxic synthetic herbicides and pesticides. I think we can cross out reduce and say eliminate.
Agreed.
There's no reason we can't get the municipality to just completely stop its use of toxic synthetic herbicides and pesticides.
So we discussed that. That was my initial proposal, and we decided we could not. That wasn't achievable because that was our recommendation from the sustainability coordinator.
I think if we want to be a model to other communities, I think we need to eliminate the use of toxic synthetic herbicides and pesticides.
Well, I'd like to talk to him first to see why he thought that wasn't a thing to do, because that was my recommendation, was to say eliminate.
That's great.
I added some bullets underneath the third bullet where it says to protect riparian habitats and natural drainage ways. I have some bullets to add to that because there are some real goals and objectives that need to be done in order to achieve that. One of them being is that we need to inventory and catalog the biodiversity and health of the ecosystems throughout town. It's kind of the first thing that has to happen if we are to move forward to protect our riparian habitat. The first thing we need to do is just understand what's there and what condition it's in. I don't know if it needs to go here, but I think we have to put it in there because that's a real goal that we can get the municipality to act on. If we just say to protect and repair, no action will take place until it's being threatened. And then we're going to talk about to what extent we protect and repair. By putting in that we're going to have a goal to inventory and catalog the biodiversity and the health of the ecosystems. Let's just get that done right from the beginning so that we know where basically all the biodiversity exists, where it's healthy, where it's not healthy. Because the reality is the ecosystem is everywhere. It's in the ditch, it's in the park, it's alongside the highway. It all needs to be protected. And when we have an idea of what's there as the beginning point, then everything that comes after that is based on that assessment. And that's really how you protect the environment. If we don't do anything and we just say we're going to protect the riparian habitat, like I said, nothing will get done until it is threatened. And then we're starting at a point of the development.
So would we just make another bullet maybe that says assess the health of the current environment?
So here,
I mean,
here's the deal. Here's the deal, guys. We have that in as a objective and a project initiative in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space document. And it's something that Cheryl brought up. You know, Boulder County has an environmental resource map where they lay out environmental conservation areas, critical wildlife habitats, overland and riparian habitat connectors, wildlife migration corridors, wetlands and riparian areas. And so her idea was we need to make one for Netherland and also the surrounding areas.
Right.
So that it's from our perspective,
right,
and connect that into Boulder County.
Right.
So,
Karen, where is that? Where are you seeing that?
okay, that is in
Apologies for not knowing that.
projects, environmental resource map. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th project in Parks,
Project down
Recreation,
below.
and Space,
Gotcha.
and it addresses overall goal 1.3 and open space 4.2.
I
That's
don't have
awesome.
your project sheet up here. I only have the goals and objectives. Do you want me to switch to that? Or am I good to just stay? I freeze when I switch platforms.
This is on Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. So,
So you don't need to switch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go down there.
So you know, and the thing is, Kevin, there's a lot of interconnection between these different committees. So we're going to get that I'll be, you know, that'll be in there.
That's good.
Right, because I would recommend that we do not. So we do have a lot of interconnectedness. That's the nature of nature. And so I think if we have similar statements in each of the separate categories, one, that makes it easier, right? We're killing a bunch of birds with one stone, so to speak.
On terminology.
Yeah, right. And two, if we only have that underneath Parks and Rec, to me, the only time that's going to come up is when we're talking about Parks and Rec. And the reality is we have to deal with private property development. We have to deal with the municipality developing their property. So it's not just Parks and Rec. And so I think it's okay and it should be encouraged to have similar statements repeated throughout this document. So
throughout all the documents.
Well,
I mean, we were wanting to have environmental sustainability statements in every one of the committees.
Right.
It needs to happen. I've yet to see that happen, but it needs to be in there in every single committee charge.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think some things need to be repeated. No problem there.
And then the other bullets that I'm recommending, I think it sounds like you guys already have them covered. The next one is really to document the interaction and relationships between ecosystems within town limits and the surrounding area, detailing how ecosystem functionality serves the community, right? So as part of the ecological assessment that we should have done in town, we should also have that ecologist or that group of scientists that come up with that explain to the community how the ecosystems within our town limits, how they're interacting with ecosystems just outside our town limits, so that it becomes a teaching moment for the community that, you know, our superficial boundaries don't matter, and we need to consider that when trying to preserve and protect our environment.
Right.
And then the other one was just to identify areas. Once we do that, assess the health of our ecosystems, we need to identify areas of high biodiversity and or highly functioning ecosystem. And that, in order to do that, and that's exactly what Boulder County does, you do that initially, you get ahead of the curve, ahead of the development, so that you identify these areas so that we don't inadvertently destroy them because somebody comes up with a really great idea, like a bridge across the creek. Everybody wants it, let's do it. And we just put it wherever it's easiest to put it. And then we realize we just destroyed the last little wetland that we have within town limits.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually propose that we put that map in the environmental
County map?
sustainability, the decision, where's that? The environmental resource map project and objective. I think it kind of more belongs into this this subcommittee. So because it's not really a park, it's not a, it's not a, it's a little bit, it's more broad than specific projects in the parks, open space, trails area. So I think we got you covered there, Kevin.
Great.
On that one.
So the next comment I had was just 1, 2, 3, 4th, 5th bullet down, the support expanded use of the community forest yards.
Right.
So this is a good example of developing goals without having a real clear vision in mind. So this goal, supporting the expanded use of our community forest yards, you know, it doesn't really get at what the goal of the forest yard is, right? And just expanding use of it, it's hard to take expanded use of the community forest yard and actually place it with a vision, right? The vision is healthy forests, right?
Is that an action, Karen? I mean, that seems kind of funky there. Isn't that more of an action than it is an objective to support the expanded use of community forest yards? I don't even remember seeing that.
No, I think it fits an objective. So all of these, the majority of these objectives and goals are very similar to ones that you'll find in other communities. It's kind of they're not, very few are measurable. I don't know, it's just takes a long time to get to that point where you can, have a measurable objective. And so, if we don't think this is important, I think we could take it out.
I think
we have a lot. We have a lot of stuff about wildfire mitigation in here and resilience. So this is more like how it ties into ecological health.
Right.
Is because it prevents wildfires. For example, if you have a lot of brush lying around in your yard, you're more susceptible to fire. So this is more like ways to improve the resiliency of property, and perhaps also if you're doing like restoration of an ecosystem, you would use that. So that's why it ended up right there.
It could kind of be combined with the one below, right? Just below that, promote wildfire mitigation on private property, support from wildfire partners. I mean, using the
Yeah.
forestry sort yards is
Yeah.
a subset of that goal, right? It's part of.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I don't know how exactly you'd combine it, but you could.
Yeah, so that's exactly kind of what my recommendation is actually to combine these next two bullets. So instead of saying support the expanded use of the community forest yards and promote wildlife mitigation, which are good objectives, I'm saying that here's a goal, that we increase the acres of mitigated forest properties by 50%, right? Here's another goal. We determine forest soil health throughout town and the surrounding areas, right? So the United States Department of Agriculture has a process for measuring the health of soil, right? Jill, you might be somewhat familiar with that. You know, they measure things like the mineral content, how well it holds water and such. And it's similar to having an inventory of our biodiversity. So this is a goal that we actually have, we make a determination of what the forest health in our surrounding, what the health of our soil is in the surrounding forests. That's a goal. And then the third bullet is to develop a plan to improve forest soil health using organic material collected from the fire mitigation projects.
Can you send me the reference for that soil health test?
Sure.
And if you have any reference for improving the soil health using organic material from fire mitigation processes.
Yep. And so then I'm recommending that we use the wildlife partners. You know, they're essentially the ones that set the standard for what mitigated property is.
Yeah, we have that down in the, we have that wildfire partners right there.
Yeah.
That's the bullet.
Right. So instead of saying, you know, support the expanded use of the sort yard and promote wildlife mitigation on property, I'm saying that this is a goal. We increase the acres of mitigated forest properties by 50%. And we define that mitigated level through wildlife or wildfire partners.
Yeah, where did you get the 50%?
Again, that's just, it's measurable. I don't know if it's doable or not, but let's start at 50%. I'm not even sure how many properties within town limits are currently mitigated. So maybe.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to put a metric on there without some something behind it, like we can achieve this, that's a good number kind of thing. So, but well, we can work with this.
I mean, we're not, those are the next steps. That's the details that we get to. But for now, if we don't set it measurable, then we end up just promoting things and supporting things. And you know, even the language, it's in some of our, the comp plan, you know, we'll do our best. Like that's the goal. And at the end of the project, nobody's accountable because we all did our best. So I really highly recommend that we start setting measurable goals as soon as possible, whether it's real, if it's real or not. That's the conversation we need to have, and we need to set ourselves up so that is the next conversation we have.
Can I bring something up here? And I really agree with what you're saying, Kevin. And the one thing I'm just noticing, and I like the direction of kind of putting things, well, making things directional at a minimum, or you know, getting some real numbers or limits. And then I remember the feedback that we call economic opportunity, community government and economic growth, whatever, that people gave them the community or the feedback that their goals were too specific and they needed to give them more general, where they would analyze something to decide maximum building height. So I guess what I'm saying is that we want to kind of, in my opinion, all these subcommittees need to, ultimately, there needs to be an author that's writing these things somewhat consistently. I worry that we're going one direction and the economic development subcommittee is getting pushed a different direction. And I like the direction we're going, and I think maybe that's more the direction the whole thing, all the committees need to go.
So Billy, it's Miranda. That is the intention, actually, is to
Okay.
have a universal voice. At this point in time, because we're getting feedback, it didn't make sense to put all that energy in when we don't even know if the community wants these goals. But once that we've landed on it, that is the intention. And we do want to mirror it to what environmental sustainability, parks, recreation, and open space have done. So that the 5 other committees will really match.
Okay, that sounds cool. I mean, and then I, for the most part, I do agree with what Kevin's saying about some kind of, actual, line in the sand. And Karen, you bring up a good point, like as for how many people are mitigating, like we don't really even know what's zero, like what are we starting at, but
yeah, a lot of
kind of like that
direction.
that way.
Initiatives and projects are developing action plans, some of them. So I could see this as being develop a forest mitigation action plan for the town. And a sub-bullet under that would be identify the percentage of property to be mitigated, something like that. So yeah, I don't want to lose the work that you've done here, but I think we need to reorganize it so it'll fit into our framework.
I just want to add something here on the mitigated properties. Boulder City had a project where their fire department went around and from the curbside, what they could evaluate, they evaluated each property as to what they thought needed to be done and provided it to people. It was a completely voluntary thing. And I don't know if wildfire partners, one of my questions is, could the town itself request wildfire partners? Would they do something for the town? Could they help us? And maybe we could start with the Big Springs neighborhood, because right now we're still struggling with that egress out of Big Springs. And, back in 2011, the Netherlands Community Wildfire Protection Plan, 2 of the things specifically about Big Springs, it said, we've got to put more sign. The street signs are terrible. You can't find your way out of here. And we need mitigation, but nothing has been done on those things. So I don't know the reality of how to get them done or who would do them, if it's appropriate to put it in here. But I thought I would mention that we could maybe talk or coordinate with Boulder and see how they set up their project to evaluate people's homes. And then after we're done with this, I wanted to go back to point 4, encourage the protection of environmentally sensitive areas, because we have, again, that word encourage, and environmentally sensitive is not defined. And, wildlife corridors aren't mentioned anywhere in here. So, but that can be another discussion since we're on the wildfire thing now.
So what I think we agreed to do here was to move the project from Parks, Recreation, and Open Space that identifies the maps out environmental resources to environmental sustainability, which would go into a lot more detail about environmentally sensitive areas. It would define those.
But do people like that language? We got rid of encourage in the first one because people didn't like encourage. And here we're just saying encourage.
I see encourage a lot in other communities in their plans. So, I mean, if we can be more specific, I suppose that's better, but it could be increase instead of encourage. So
it could just be protect.
So
yes.
protect environmentally sustainable areas, sensitive areas. Just protect environmentally sensitive areas.
Yeah,
I agree with that. That's better, more active.
Okay. Encourage So, but as far as the Big Springs egress is concerned, I think it probably does belong in this project because it is related to resiliency. But I don't know what else you were saying, Susan, about the mitigation in Big Springs. I didn't quite understand that.
Oh, sorry. No, and I see that Karen put up something that Wildfire Partners, our program, that the town may already have some kind of program with them. But no, what I was saying was, I remember a year or two ago, the city of Boulder announced they had a project where they were going throughout the city and stopping at curbsides because they can't go on private property, and making evaluations of each home in terms of what needed to be done to mitigate it. And I don't know that anything like that is being done in our town of Nederland, but it would provide a basis for this discussion of what percentage needs to be mitigated if that kind of evaluation were done. And again, I don't know the possibilities the town has if Wildfire Partners charges the town, or who would do it. A fire department may not have the manpower to do it. I'm just saying there was a Boulder City project that did attempt to evaluate and inform people of what ideally they'd recommend they do to protect their property. That's
So
all.
Susan, this
Yeah.
is Karen. I just want to say we do still partner with Wildfire Partners, and they do still offer that program where people can have them come to their homes. And it was free last year. It's currently free as far as I understand it. But what you're saying to do something even more robust than that, where somehow
Yeah.
we bring Wildfire Partners to do the entire town?
Yes, I'm talking about something more robust. You know, we did the Wildfire Partners project, and I know individuals can do it. I think Boulder, I could look into the Boulder City thing and get more information to you, but I was struck by it because a lot of people, of course, do not ask Wildfire Partners and are not interested in participating, and you can't force them to mitigate their homes. So I think Boulder City was trying to take a step, and, you know, they have a lot more resources, obviously. And my recollection, it was the Boulder City Fire Department. I'm not sure, it may have been in cooperation with Wildfire Partners. They actually went around and evaluated, I think probably just in the, I think it was primarily in the WUI, their western border, you know, where you're getting up into WUI areas close to us, but we're all WUI. So yes, it would be a more robust thing where you'd have someone go around and evaluate from curb the homes that need more mitigation. And
I do want to just mention, you guys, that you've got 20 minutes left in your hour and a half
Okay.
meeting. And I just want to make sure, is this the only area you want to focus on? Or was there another area that you guys wanted to focus on? Or was this the main thing you all wanted to talk about? The ecological health goal?
Well, I think we want to discuss all of Kevin's comments. So I think we need to schedule another meeting with Kevin.
I say let's go through them all right now.
All right now? Okay.
Yeah, we have
That's
20
it.
minutes.
I'll
Kevin,
Okay.
go as quickly as I can. So the next one, it was actually under this one here. We had revise and update the building design standards to improve resiliency to wildfires. To me, that seems a little clunky. What I would recommend changing it to is to adopt appropriate Boulder County building design standards regarding wildfire safety.
Mhm.
What does Billy think about that?
I love it because it may go above and beyond the 2018.
Okay.
ICC 2018 we're looking at. But are we just talking about buildings, or are we talking about more than just buildings?
I just want to point out that that's on the BOT agenda tomorrow, to adopt a new ordinance that would put Nederland under the same fire standards that Boulder County is under for the WUI. So that is on the Board of Trustees agenda tomorrow. So I don't know.
Is that specifically for buildings? And I just don't.
It's specifically for residential. Miranda
just
actually
for
probably.
Okay.
Just for clarity, that was already adopted years ago, and apparently it was put under the wrong, it needs to be moved to the residential section of the code. So it's not a new code. And it's actually been enforced according to the fire department already, but it's
Right.
just making the code correct so that it's in the right space. So
Yeah,
that's not adoption of a new code, just FYI.
so
Okay.
But I mean, so do we still need to revise and update building design standards to improve resiliency? Isn't that adoption for residential buildings? It wasn't technically enforced for residential buildings until now. So do we really need this, or has it already been done? We're adopting Boulder County standards, aren't we?
So
Well, anyway,
there's a new building code coming out that we've all been reviewing. And that building code has additional requirements for wildfire resiliency. So that's what our bullet was referring to: revise and update building design standards to improve resiliency to wildfires according to those new standards.
Right. My recommendation was really just because the resiliency to wildfires, it's kind of a heady term. It's not clear. The other point of my recommendation is just to allow us not to have to reinvent the wheel. Boulder County has already gone through this. We just adopt from their code that they've already done the work on appropriate sections. Not all of what they have for rural Boulder County is appropriate for every building inside the town of Nederland. So we need to be aware of that. This isn't, I want us to not work as hard to reinvent the wheel, but I also do not want us to just canvass Boulder County's code because it's just not appropriate. So that was my intention for that recommendation.
So is Boulder County up to date on their building codes?
They traditionally have been, and I think they are now. They've adopted the 2019, but they also have amendments. They also include amendments to their code. Traditionally, the town of Nederland has really just simply adopts the latest version of the International Building Code. Right now, I think we're on 2009. Most of the
We're actually at 2012 right now. We are looking at 2018 with amendments. 2021 is what's under consideration right now with Boulder County, I believe.
Yep.
Is it
Yep.
the city of Boulder, Miranda, or the Boulder County that's already looking at 2021? Do you remember?
Boulder County.
Yeah, Boulder County. So we're doing exactly what you're suggesting, Kevin. We're
Perfect.
looking at 2018 with amendments, or if the board chooses, the Board of Trustees, it could be 2021 with amendments. And it is kind of nice, as you're suggesting, to let Boulder County kind of go through their iterations first. And that's sort of what we've been doing. We've been using them for our cues.
Perfect. That was the whole intent, just to latch on to Boulder County, don't reinvent the wheel, make it a little more easy to understand. We'll just adopt their county, the Boulder County codes regarding wildfire safety.
Okay.
So
sounds like that's what we want to do.
My next set of recommendations under the economy goal was really, again, an attempt to get more measurable goals on paper. So, recommending we rewrite the goal to localize our economy and shift away from our economies, because this is really what we want to do. Right now, we're talking about green businesses and a local economy that encourages green businesses and business practices.
Miranda, can you scroll up
So
on that, Miranda?
The green business.
I just would like to read it. Go up to the, or down, I'm sorry, down to the economy. There we go. Down to the economy. There we go.
The green business practice would include reducing dependence on fossil fuels. And as far as the diversity of a diverse local economy, we have support a diverse local economy that encourages green businesses and business practices. The idea there is that if the economy is diverse, then people won't need to go elsewhere in order to make their purchases and to do their business. They could do it all in town. That would reduce traffic and the pollution caused by traffic. And if we look at the comprehensive plan, there is an objective for the economy to be diverse.
Right.
So the diversity was something that we felt was a best practice for environmental sustainability.
Yep. I totally understand the reason why we'd want a diverse economy. What I'm saying is that we are a community with very little resources. And the most cost-effective thing we can do is focus on what works for us now, what our economy is now. Communities that have spent significant resources on trying to diversify their economy often sort of fall flat. Our money will be better spent shoring up what we already have success in our economy.
Can I back up a little bit? Miranda, are you like crossing out our bullets under the economy goal, or what are we looking at here?
This is Kevin's feedback document.
Okay.
I just thought, so since he's reading off of it, it made sense to just pull this up.
Okay, so we're not adopting all of these.
No, I didn't move any of
Okay.
these into your document. I just wanted for Susan and other people who have seen this.
All right.
This was what Kevin sent today.
All right.
So rewriting the goal, it's an attempt to actually get to the real goal. Our goal is not necessarily to have green businesses, right? Because quite honestly, that doesn't mean much. And there's plenty of people in our community that means nothing to. What we're really trying to do is localize our economy and shift away from our economy's dependence on fossil fuels. That's really what our goal is.
Well, there's also green business practices like zero waste. So the green business practice encompasses more than fossil fuel.
Right. That's why I'm suggesting to get rid of that the whole notion of green businesses. It's a term that we should just walk away from because it really doesn't mean anything. It's been used incorrectly for too many years.
Yeah. Well, how would you frame it?
Maybe we should, I agree, maybe we should just reword it in a way that's like, and I don't have a solution in the moment, but businesses that, or businesses which, and spell something out, but.
Supported, yeah.
I mean,
What was your suggestion, Kevin? What was your suggestion?
My suggestion is really just to, to localize our economy. And
yeah.
I think we all understand what that means. And that, just to be clear, what that means is our economy has many transactions between and within our boundaries. The more business transactions we can have within our boundaries, the more localized our business transactions become, the less fossil fuel dependent those transactions are, and the more tax money we collect through those transactions. So
right, but what Karen is saying, though, I mean, which I agree, I think we need to capture it somehow, is all just a zero waste, the other things that we need to encompass in that overarching goal there.
And by the green business, what we're saying there are, we want to support businesses that produce products that improve the sustainability of our environment.
I mean, would environmentally sound business practices?
And the green businesses as like companies involved in solar panels or companies
involved. But I agree with what Kevin's saying. That green thing is a washed word. It's done.
Well,
it really is. It's kind of gotten.
I
so
see
if
it
you can be more specific there.
I see it in other communities.
Sound.
So, I mean,
more environmentally sustainable businesses or something like that. It just
environmentally sustainable businesses.
The point I had is that I don't want us to, as a community, focus on bringing in necessarily, like let's focus and budget money to bring in a solar manufacturing, a PV manufacturing company, right? That kind of is going with what you originally are saying. My point is that would be a waste of time, and we don't know if we could be successful or not. So I address the zero waste and pretty much everything within my bullets underneath. So the first thing we would do It is asked the
So
municipality.
can
to
we
adopt-
back up, Kevin? I want to
Sure.
capture what Billy said. Okay, so the proposal is support a diverse local economy that encourages environmentally sustainable businesses.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a little more specific that, you know, and it at least ties into the name of our subcommittee. And I think the green thing is vague and you know, green encompasses everything from things that are valid to things that are just, you know, well, invalid. And so, I think something like environmentally sustainable. I mean, I think, yeah, I think about, you know, if I was going to build a solar, you know, we can't necessarily predict what kind of companies will come, but like if I was going to build a solar panel company, I wouldn't build it up here because you got to drive them all down the canyon and out from there. It's like you're going to build, you know, some of that kind of stuff just isn't going to pick place where we are. So
okay.
maybe I think we have to. You know.
Okay, so Miranda, can you jot that down to replace green businesses and green businesses practices with environmentally sustainable businesses?
I have a separate document on a different computer, and then I'll move it to the feedback.
Okay, I can get it on what.
So we can move on past that, but you know, that's not much of a change because again, what does that mean for an environmentally sustainable business?
Well, that's
that
what
can mean a lot of different things.
Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, is to shift our economy away from fossil fuel dependence.
Mm-hmm.
But
that covers everything. And that's really what we want.
Mm-hmm.
But what about recycling and composting and using less packaging?
It's all in the bullets below. So the first thing we'd ask is that.
But how is that related to fossil fuels?
I think he's saying to make sure you include that in the goal, the moving away from fossil fuel dependence within the goal.
Right. And so when we create waste, the waste that we create is produced from fossil fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires fossil fuel.
I get that. I get that. However, it's not common knowledge.
It doesn't need to be common knowledge. We are just focusing on reducing our dependence on fossil fuels.
And then the
if we take actions to do that, we will cover zero waste.
I think using that logic, we wouldn't have a zero waste goal. There are some things that we need to call out.
If we look at the bullets that I provided here, the first thing we do with regard to localizing our economy and shifting away from fossil fuel dependence is have the municipality adopt a local purchasing preference based on something we know exists, which is best practices established by the Institute for Local Self-Resilience, right? Again, let's not reinvent the wheel. The standard is already developed. Let's just follow it, okay? And I know that the town already has a local purchasing preference. It seems like every so many years we pass a resolution asking the town to purchase locally. We just got to shore that up and make it more real, okay?
So you're saying for the town itself, not for private businesses?
Well, so initially, again, we only have control over what the municipality does, right? And if we want to affect change, if we want the businesses to follow, we have to have the municipality walk the walk. So the first thing I would do is have the municipality first purchase all their stuff as much as they can locally, right? And purchase resources that are locally sourced, right? And again, there's a whole best practices that have been established, and I think we should just have the municipality adopt that.
I think we have improved sustainability of town of Netherlands procurements under the economy goal already.
Right, and so I'm putting some teeth to that. I'm saying follow and establish best practices that we know exist, and
Okay, I think
adopt it.
That would be down in the action items, I think, about how to accomplish that particular objective. That's one thing, is to develop the policy. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that improve sustainability of the town of Netherlands procurements I just, I don't think it means anything. And I don't think,
Why doesn't it mean anything?
well, what does that mean? How do you
That
improve
means that-
sustainability of our procurements?
The statement always seemed like I didn't really understand what procurements mean, and it's not a very
This is
easily
what we
understood word.
purchase. But how do you define the municipality's purchases as being more sustainable?
The more sustainable would be they have less packaging, they're locally produced, they are recyclable or reusable. They're made from sustainable materials, just the whole thing. So it's kind of a broad statement.
Okay.
But I get what you're saying. I mean, and that's maybe something that should be in each bullet is how the town of Netherland will improve their sustainability actions for each of these different areas. I
Right.
think we sort of had something like that to begin with, like use less water, transportation, more sustainable transportation things,
Yep.
all of that.
I just want us to, this is our opportunity to really define what that is in clear,
Right.
No uncertain terms.
Mhm.
And when I read things like we're going to improve the sustainability of what we purchase, I mean, I just see a lot of eye rolling in the community. And
I like your conversation. I think it deserves more time. I think we
Right.
should schedule the time to focus specifically on this goal. That's my
So-
opinion.
Oh, this goal.
This is important right here.
Yeah.
And also this should also align very closely to the economic development goals and objectives.
What I'd like to propose is that I work in Kevin's suggestions, and then we review that document together
Yeah,
with Kevin
That's great.
and see
That's great, Karen.
what we come up with. How's that?
Yeah, and Kevin,
So
I
let's-
appreciate that you took the time to really look at this and think it through because it's important, that
Yeah,
we get
thank you.
feedback from people like you in the community. And I would recommend you look at the municipality one and the economic development one if you have time. Because I do think this all needs to mesh as alignment. There can't be like a whole different thing on the other committees.
Right.
So,
And then I don't know who's the person, but we need to make sure that the other subcommittees are tying environmental sustainability
that's
goals
correct.
into their goals, because that
Mhm.
was the original idea.
Right.
I think I need to talk to you about the rest of your comments though before I do the incorporation, just to make sure we're on the same page, Kevin. So maybe a phone call.
Quickly go through them.
I think
Yeah, let's
we
not
brought
discuss
time.
them. Let's just move through them real quick.
Okay.
We just have 1
The
minute.
rest of my recommendations under the economy goal really were an attempt to put some real numbers. I basically say budget $10,000 a year. Sometimes it's per year. Sometimes it's a single $10,000 amount. The dollar amount is not important. Again, we need to get at that detail, but we need to set the precedent that the only way we're going to get anywhere with this is if the municipality actually has it in their budget, right?
Well, not necessarily. It could be a grant. So as far as the budgeting, I see that as getting into prioritizing and scheduling,
Okay.
and then you see what's
Agreed.
at the top of the list, and then find money for it.
Perfect.
So here's what happens is that traditionally, we kind of have loosey-goosey goals and objectives, and then when a grant comes by, we kind of jump on it, right? And then it's kind of hit or miss depending on what the application looks like. What I'm suggesting is if we have this stuff in a list and we're asking the municipality to budget for it. Whether or not it gets budgeted this next year or not, that's beside the point. But if a grant comes through and it ties right in with something that we're trying to achieve, and we actually have a list saying we're going to budget for that, that sells the grant. Why does that make sense? I mean, it really shows their commitment to what we're trying to achieve here.
Well, I think DDA might have budgets. It might do something like this for the businesses.
I understand what you're saying there, Kevin, but I do think that some of these things are outside of the budget. Like, you know, your budget really isn't contingent on whether or not you get a grant in terms of Town of Nederland budget. I wouldn't think that would be how it operates. So basically, these grants are written with a project budget as an add-on to what already exists in the town budget, from my perspective.
I will
I
say,
couldn't
I know
imagine- I
you guys
couldn't
are
imagine-
trying to, I know you guys are trying to wrap up quick, but I just wanted to tell you, this is Karen, that for our large projects and our large grants that we typically get through organizations like DOLA, there are components of the grants where if you do, you know, use these kind of energy efficient equipment and supplies and resources and whatever, you get bonus points. And that's what we did to get the 0% loan and the grant for the biosolids project. We did the same thing with the TIP project. So I just want you to know staff is really savvy about this and we leverage it, and it is part of our procurement policy. Not to say we couldn't do even more, but I did want you to know this is in our radar. We do institute it, and it has made a big difference for our large construction projects.
Thanks,
So,
Karen.
so are you saying that these things are actually in the town budget in the hopes that you get a grant?
Not necessarily. So there's some things that we budget for the supply, let's say, in that supply line. If we can procure it, there's two different vendors pretty equal, and there's a certain percentage increase, but it means it's going to be in a more sustainably produced, let's say, resource. We're going to go with that as long as it meets our budget. So, you know, I understand what Kevin's saying is the more teeth you put in it, the more money you put behind it, the more likely it's going to happen. I will say, though, that we look for every opportunity to go within our budget and be able to be sustainable in, you know, in all of our projects as much as we can. And yeah, it would be great. And I think for all businesses in the town, if there was, and I know Boulder, the county of Boulder has grant money where that you can, businesses and municipalities can apply for to be able to make a certain projects more sustainable. So there's lots of different opportunities out there, and we do look for them, and we do try to implement that as much as we can.
Yeah, I don't see the budget going into any part of this document. I haven't seen that in other strategic plans, and you know, that would be a little difficult to do, especially not knowing what else is going on in town, and even this planning process is not comprehensive. There are things in the you know, categories in the comprehensive plan that aren't in Envision 2030. So I can't see putting budget numbers in this plan at all.
Maybe it's not the right place for it, but if we don't put real measurable budget numbers to some of our projects, they'll never get done. The only projects that get done are ones that are in the budget.
Mm.
And if it's not in the budget and a grant comes along and we all jump on it, then without having it previously budgeted for, it's really hard to defend.
So Miranda, what's going to happen to the action plan for Envision 2030?
Well, I think though, based on the recent feedback that you and I talked about, the thought was to put this before the board at the second meeting in May and see if that's in fact how they want to move forward, or if they just want to stop at goals and objectives. And then Kevin, the next step of that would be to then transition to getting the funding to do the comprehensive plan and let these goals and objectives help to kind of guide that process a little bit and as a resource. So I'm not sure if the board will want to do an action plan that was originally proposed to them, but as we've moved forward in this process, there may be a desire to kind of stop here and then tie to the comp plan.
And then the action plan in the comp plan, would we be able to like budget those projects somehow?
I mean, I guess I maybe would be looking to Kevin. I haven't sat through a comprehensive plan. You know, we're just using Envision as more of a kind of a strategic plan. And so I'm not sure how comprehensive and how specific a comp plan typically gets. It seemed, you know, it does have some measurable goals in it, but not all. I guess we'd be looking to that consultant to help determine if we would want to involve like budgetary numbers in that, because that we would in fact do a comprehensive plan with an external company.
Now, I do know we do yearly budgets for the town. And it seems like there would be some prioritization of projects in order to get the project into the budget. So maybe that's when numbers are put to projects and we decide which ones are done each year. So it seems more like a budgeting, something that would happen during
that
the
is a big
budgeting
part of our
process.
annual budget. We talk about the major CIP projects that we just need to get done, and we need to figure out, you know, how much of it's coming from our own budget, and then how much are we hoping to augment through grants and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. So do we keep going with this document now? Do we have time to do that, or
I guess
is it
I'd
another
recommend that
reading?
if everyone wants to just, you know, go through and read my comments, because I think the rest of the comments are just, they're along the same general intent.
Okay.
Is to, you know, we have to get away from simply saying that we're going to encourage and support things. We have to really put some teeth to it. We have to increase things. We have to reduce things. It needs to be more actionable.
Okay. All right, well, I'll see what I can do with this, and have your number, Kevin. So I might.
So, Karen, are you gonna be working through this, or is Miranda been working through this? I would just like to see whatever you guys are working on, either now or later, so I can get a better sense of reading through Kevin's comments.
Oh, okay, so here was my proposal, is I take Kevin's comments and what we've discussed tonight and incorporate those into our document, and then I'll review that with everyone.
So did you get your question answered about when staff's going to be working on this? Was that a specific question to Karen and Miranda?
Sorry, no, not you, Karen. And
Oh, okay, Karen
I was
Blakemore. Okay,
unsure
got it.
because I thought Miranda was actually showing, you know, it was actually her showing us this, you know, we're viewing Miranda Fisher's laptop. So I didn't know if she was the one working through this or if Karen Blakemore was.
Blakemore. Okay, got it. Yeah.
I guess I'd like to
'Cause
see some of the comments before you, Karen, fold them in, because I may not know what was or wasn't folded in.
Oh, you received email with
Okay,
Kevin's
I just got having
document.
gone out of town and so I had not.
It has all the comments in it. You know, I sort of want to work on this soon, just while it's fresh in my mind.
Oh, go for it. Go for it. I'll read the comments. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Okay. And then we'll just go from there.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
Not for me. Thanks for your time.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.